further ado, I want to introduce Bob Gibbs. We have worked with Bob for a couple years now, well, for at least a year, on a number of different things in focusing on our retail sector downtown. So Bob is an acclaimed urbanist, was most recently added as one of the 100 most influential urbanists by Planet is in magazine. Bob has worked in over 400 cities and town centers across the world, and is going to take you on a little bit of a journey on visual merchandising today. I know some of you have had a chance to have Bob come in yesterday, and some are signed up today. So again, we're really excited about this. This is the first in our series of professional development that we're going to be doing for our retailers throughout the year. So we have 3 more sessions coming up. We'll talk about those at the end of the day or end of the morning. And we have a really big year generally for downtown this year too. So we have several big development projects we're anticipating announcing. We're going through some changes organizationally at DKI, including rebranding and some rebranding for downtown. We have some funds from the Foundation for Excellence that we're planning to deploy for new street furniture and streetscape downtown. And what am I forgetting here? We're going to talk about parking too. So Bob has some insights on that. Bob is going to share his little bit of an overview of the retail analysis, the market analysis he did last year, and then get right into the merchandising piece. So here we go. Thanks so much, Bob. Please give him a hand.
Thank you. Thank you. How many of you are retailers or restaurant owners? Okay, great. You have the hardest job, I think, in the world. You have to buy merchandise 6 months, a year in advance. You have to get the right sizes, the right colors, the right brands. And then after you do all that, you still have customers coming into your store, taking photos of what you sell and then trying to buy it online. Someone told me yesterday that somebody was in their store, and after spending a half hour with them, they said they're going to buy it on Amazon because it's $1 less on Amazon. So customers right now are being quite rude, and my sympathies for you that are trying to make a living doing this. It used to be a lot easier than it is now. We're going to talk about merchandising. That's the science of how you get customers into your store, how you get them to come more frequently, and then once they're into your store, how do you get them to stay there longer and buy things that maybe they didn't go in there to buy. A lot of your stores are purpose-driven stores where I know people are coming specifically to go to your store. Some of you are getting traffic by people walking along the sidewalk. But there's a whole science called visual merchandising and store planning that I learned at the Taubman Company. They're large shopping center developers, and they're known for having very high retail sales. There's a whole science to the way that you do your window display, the way that the store is designed, the way that the lighting is located. You want lighting so that it doesn't cause a glare. It's nice not to see the light bulb, for example. We're going to talk about that when we come to your stores. Right now the stores are stacking merchandise according to color, so that when you're outside and you look into the store, it's easier to shop. And then they're making the window displays easy to understand in 2 seconds or less. They're finding that people have a very short attention span, and you have to make an impact very, very quickly. Also, they're washing the windows on a very regular basis. The national retailers are now washing their stores their storefronts once a day, and they're washing the doors 4 or 5 times a day. Jimmy John's, the Subway restaurant, requires that all of their franchisees wash all glass surfaces 5 times a day. There's been shown to be a direct correlation between how clean your store is, how clean your front door is, and what people perceive when they come into your store. We visited a very beautiful store yesterday, one of the best I've seen in a long time, but the door was unpainted and the hinges were really rusted, and it was just telling people a wrong message when they went into the store. I just finished doing 25 visual merchandising stops in Harbor Town and Hilton Head last week. And one of the store owners that we met with, a gift shop, sent me this photograph last night. I told them to paint their shelves. Their shelves were dark brown. and it was causing the merchandise to get hidden and buried. And so I suggested they paint their shelves a sea foam green. And he already did it and already has sent me photographs of his new store, which is very rewarding. As a part of this service to downtown Kalamazoo, I'm offering you 6 months of free consulting by internet. So if you want to take a photo of my email address or write it down, for the next 6 months, you are all welcome to send me photographs of your store with specific questions, or you can just email me questions. You can say, we can't sell something in this corner of the store. What do you think about that? There's absolutely no charge for it at all. And I really have a lot of fun. I travel almost every day. I sleep in hotels 220 nights a year. And it's a lot of fun when I'm by myself just to hear from store owners and to give free advice. We also have the Urban Retail Institute, and our Facebook site on the Urban Retail Institute posts articles that you would find interesting every day. There's no charge for that either. If you are our Facebook or LinkedIn person, every day we post articles about urban retail that I think you would find very interesting. Being a store in a downtown is very challenging. It's more challenging than, it used to be a lot more challenging than a mall. Now malls are more challenging than downtowns because a lot of people are resisting going to the malls. But in the downtown, you have to get, you have a shopping district where stores open and close at will. You have a lot of distractions. Parking can be a really big challenge in downtowns. And your job can be very, very difficult. This is downtown Birmingham where I live. And Birmingham has a very nice business improvement district, which Andrew tells me you're going to be working on right now. And the business improvement district does things like beautify our downtown with really nice flowers. Downtown Kalamazoo is one of the most beautiful downtowns we've been in a long time. It's very historic. You have a very beautiful streetscape. It's very clean. It's very well maintained. There are a couple of challenges that we think are artificially suppressing the market. One of them is just a general lack of parking. Another one is the one-way streets. Generally, one-way streets are more challenging for retail districts than two-way streets. Those are things that may not be able to be changed for a very long time, but we found the market as being artificially suppressed for non-market reasons. What you have going for you are really beautiful historic buildings, and that's what a lot of tourists and a lot of people are looking for, especially millennials. Millennials really like living and working in downtowns. Andrew's group hired us to do a very sophisticated market study for the downtown area last year. We estimated, based on talking to a lot of you showed us where your customers live. Based on that, we estimated the trade area. This is downtown Kalamazoo. This is where we estimated the primary trade area was, which is about a 10-mile radius. Some of you have shoppers coming from far greater than that, but on average you have about a 10-mile radius, which is a large radius. We found that in your primary trade area there's 237,000 people living there and almost 100,000 households, and they have a high average household income of $64,000 per year. So these are really excellent demographics. The total trade area, you have over 600,000 people living in your total trade area. So even though you may consider yourself a small city, you actually have the demographics of a very, very large city. We found that currently the way the streets and parking lot are in your downtown, that you can support an additional 27,000 square feet of new retail. That would equate to about $5.3 million in sales. You can support additional specialty food stores, full-service restaurants. You can support more gift stores, department store type merchandise like cosmetics, and there's a lot of room for bars and brew pubs. So there is a considerable amount of demand for new retail. I don't know if there's enough space to accommodate that retail. That demand could be picked up by you increasing your sales. A lot of you, there are small things you could do to increase your sales so you could absorb that demand. So if the downtown stayed exactly the way it is right now, the parking and the one-way streets and all that, you could absorb about 27,000 additional square feet. In 2009, the city did a study to see what could be done to increase commerce in the downtown. And these are things that they recommended about 10 years ago to be done. Install 25 to 35 new on-street spaces, for example. And they had a whole list of things that could be done. A lot of these have been done, but not all of these have been done in the city, and the downtown Kalamazoo are still working on that. We estimated if all of those things were done today, that the downtown could support 156,000 square feet of additional retail, generating about $51 million a year in retail sales. Or you could absorb that with existing retailers. So if there are ways that the city could make fine-tuning adjustments to your parking and your street design and a number of elements, there is an opportunity for a lot of additional retail. This would almost increase the retail sales downtown by about 30%. We found that some of the basic things that need to be done are, we'd like to see you install additional on-street parking, install two-way streets, install parking meters with 2 hours free in the decks, implement a business recruitment program, and expand the downtown marketing. With the new business improvement district that's going to be implemented, a lot of these items will happen, and the city is working right now. They're looking at launching a new parking study, for example. The city is already acting on a lot of these recommendations that we made last year. The downtown, again, is very attractive. It's very walkable because you have a narrow street and you have wide sidewalks. We noted that a lot of people eat outside in the summer when it's nice weather, and you probably could support additional cafe seating, which the downtown district is going to be working on right away. This is our study. You can get this online probably through Downtown Kalamazoo.
And we'll send a link to everyone.
This study is the kind of study that we do for, we get hired by shopping malls and retailers in downtowns, and it tells you how many square feet of additional retail are supportable under the status quo, and how many if you made the improvements. So if you are a florist, for example, we found that with the improvements you could support 1,100 square feet of additional florists. Today there's a demand for 2,000 square feet of additional gift stores. They would generate about $160 a square foot per year. Overall, we found that under the status quo, the downtown could support about $200. You would earn about $200 in sales per square foot. With the improvements, you would earn about $330. If you are a downtown business owner, or if you're a landlord and property owner, I recommend that you get a copy of this study and read it. This is designed so landlords can target tenants to lease to. It's designed for retailers so that you can identify whom your customers are and whom you want to go after, and then of course for the city to make policy decisions. So this is our demand chart for restaurants. We found, for example, under the status quo, you could support probably 2 full-service restaurants. If the improvements were implemented, you could support about 13,000 square feet of restaurants. That'd be about 5 or 6 additional restaurants, and their sales would be about $329 a square foot per year. And then this is just a bar chart showing what's supportable. There's a lot of demand for additional apparel and clothing stores if you can implement these improvements. And then overall, with the status quo, you can support you can generate about $5 million a year in additional retail sales. If you did the improvements, you could generate about $52 million a year in additional sales. The existing leakage right now is about $500 million. We estimate that every year there's about $500 million a year that's leaving this area and shopping in Grand Rapids or shopping in other places. Of that, we think it's realistic for you to try to capture 3 to 10% of it. Sales. You're all concerned about sales. If you are a small retailer downtown in an urban setting, you should be trying to earn $300 of sales per square foot per year. That's considered the minimum that's necessary for you to pay yourself a living wage and to get a market rate of return on your investment. So all of you should estimate your gross sales, divide that by the square footage of your showroom and your storage area if it's a reasonable size, and that should tell you your sales per square foot. The industry generally wants to see sales of $300 a square foot per year. Rents should be about 8 to 10% of your gross sales. So if you think you're paying too much in rent, calculate your gross sales, and your rent should be about 8 to 10% of that. And then occupancy costs like utilities and taxes and CAM and insurance are on top of that 8 to 10%. In the United States, the average small town retailer that we work with only has sales of $80 a square foot per year. Our goal is to have sales of $300 a square foot per year. Most Main Street retailers just have sales of $80 a square foot per year, which isn't sustainable. You can't pay yourself a wage with $80. The US mall, most average shopping malls have sales of $275 a square foot per year. The highest grossing mall in the country is the Taubman Company, whom I work for, and they have sales of almost $1,000 a square foot per year. So we'd like to see all of you in this $275 to $300 a square foot range. That's what the market expects you to be able to do. If you want to look at grocery store sales, to put that in perspective, Trader Joe's has sales of about $2,000 a square foot per year. Did Trader Joe's open here yet?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so it's the highest grossing grocery store in the country. Whole Foods has sales of about $1,200 a square foot per year. An Apple store, the average Apple computer, you don't really have an Apple store here, do you? Yeah, you'll probably get one. The average Apple store has sales of $5,000 a square foot per year. Their sales are so high that if they're in your shopping mall, Wall Street won't let you count their average because it changes your number so much. The Apple store in New York, where the Cube is, has sales of $66,000 a square foot per year, and that's in a basement with no windows. Okay, it's open 24 hours a day though. So that's probably the highest grossing retailer. If you can come close to $66,000 a year, you can all retire in about 6 months. A little resort town we work on in Florida called Seaside. It's in the panhandle of Florida. Has sales of $1,100 a square foot per year, which is extraordinary because they only have a 4-month season. And they're really shut down for 8 months a year, but they do $1,100 a square foot per year. The average retail in the United States is there's 20 square feet of retail per person compared to the rest of the world. We are really over-retailed in the United States. Kalamazoo is not over-retailed yet. You're actually statistically under-retailed. That's why you have $500 million a year leaving this market. There is room for a lot more retail in this greater Kalamazoo market. The other challenge is that the average paycheck, when the average US family gets their paycheck, only 5% goes for dining out and only 4% goes for apparel. Your customers are spending 91% of their paycheck before they get it. And so if they have an unexpected expense, if they don't get their overtime, they don't go shopping. And so your job as a retailer is to get people to spend money sometimes that they just don't have. And you have to constantly come up with gimmicks and tricks and sales to get people to shop. My son goes to school in Scotland and he gets a haircut every week. And I found out why when I went over to visit him, because he gets a free shot of whiskey with every haircut, okay? That's a brilliant little gimmick that barber does to get college students who normally don't get their haircut into his place. JCPenney's, their gimmick is they have 50% off. 60% of all the Penny's sales are 50% off. People just expect that. And today, unfairly, when people walk into your store today, they want to see 5 things on sale. It can all be as little as 10 or 15%. But if you don't have at least 5 things, and it has to be the good things that are in season. If you don't have at least 5 things on sale scattered around the store, not some sales rack in the back corner, if you don't have at least 5 things on sale, they're going to think that you're overpriced. They think you're overpriced before they even go into your store but that really reinforces it. This is a little gimmick in Cape Cod where this store owner got the city to paint the crosswalks to go directly to their front door. So every time you cross the street, you have the urge to buy a gift. It's really brilliant. When I worked at Taubman, I was Taubman's urban planner, and my job was to come up with these little tricks to get people into the stores to stay longer and control the way they walk. We learned how to make you turn left and how to make you turn right in our mall. We learned how to make you go fast and how to go slow. We used time-lapse photography and studied what worked for you. So in our malls, you would be completely manipulated. We completely know how to make you go up and down the escalator, how to go right, how to go slow, how to go fast, and all that. I get to work for a lot of cities. I just finished a 5-year project for South Memphis, and it's a very poor area where most people are living below the poverty line. And this is their only grocery store, and this is their only restaurant. And our job, and there's 35,000 people, and that's it for them. Our job was to bring new retail into that market, and we found that when you look at the average spending power per acre in an inner city, it's higher than the suburbs because the density is so high. So even though the average income was only $17,000 per year, because of the high density, the spending per acre was much higher, and we used that to attract new retailers. We just finished a study in the Hamptons in New York, in Long Island, New York, and this is a very beautiful, very high-end downtown. Their challenge was that in one summer they had 14 vacancies. This is their main street, and we were hired to see why they developed 14 vacancies in one summer. They never have had any. And we found out the reason was they moved the library from here to here. And people used to go to the library, about 1,200 people a day, because they were young families, and then they would go to the restaurants and they would go shopping. And by putting the library over there, nobody could walk across the highway and go shopping. They also moved their post office out of the downtown, a little grocery store, and they lost an anchor. And by losing these important anchors, the retailers couldn't keep up and they were closing. Kalamazoo is very fortunate that you have so many anchors here. You have a great hospital, you have universities, you have the county building. You have a lot of very significant anchors that bring people here on a regular basis. Most cities are losing those anchors. You have a library down here too, don't you? Yeah, most cities are losing those. By the way, the shopping street in Southampton is 1,000 feet long. That's the length of most shopping streets. Most of the better shopping streets are only 1,000 feet long. When they're longer than that, we compartmentalize them into sub-districts. We just finished an assignment for a new town that's 12 years old now in Florida, and it's got very high luxury demographics. The average household income is $180,000 per year, but half of this store has been vacant because they didn't have an anchor. They built too much retail without an anchor. This is another center that we're working on in Utah. This center is completely vacant because they couldn't attract a grocery store. And they couldn't attract a grocery store because the architect designed it to be too small. And grocery stores need about 40,000 square feet. By the way, if you had a grocery store downtown, statistically, it would increase all of your sales by 25%. Grocery stores or public markets like they have in Bay City now statistically increase sales significantly. And that's one of the things we recommend you try to do. This is a center we're working on in Maryland right now, and it's totally vacant. It's 12 years old, and our job was to figure out why. This is why. You can see how the retail is below grade, and it's got a fence between the sidewalk and the storefronts. And so, they hired me to say, why don't people go shopping at our center? So, some of my jobs are kind of stupid. So, I had to say, let me go back to Detroit and think about it for 6 months, and then I'll write you a memo and tell you why nobody shops here. I couldn't just tell them right on the spot; they wouldn't want to pay me. But this is their center, and it's actually has all gravel dirt floors. It's a center that's 40,000 square feet that's never had a tenant. And so we get called into the silliest things. They lose $1 million a year on this center because they just broke so many fundamental retail rules. Visual merchandising is when you have a really great store like this and it gets people into your store on a regular basis. I'm going to talk a lot about the front and center table. This is a national retailer, and this is their front and center table, and they like to put the clothing on real mannequins. They don't put them on hangers. If they're on hangers, it looks like a scarecrow. They like to have what's known as lifestyle props. Those are things you buy at flea markets or antique shops, and they make it relatable. The store gets relatable to what people have at home. And then we like these signs, these A-frame handcrafted signs. This is the seat for the man to sit. You have to have a man chair in your store, and you have to have manly magazines by the man store, you know, like Hot Rod and Outdoor Life and Hunting and things like that. You can't have Bridal Salon by the man chair. It has to be real manly magazines. And then for some reason, if you put a flag like that in your store, it's said to increase sales by 3 to 5%. Flags really work real well. People feel patriotic and they like to have flags in their stores. Walkability. There's a system called the Walk Score right now where people measure the walkability of how easy it is to walk into your downtown. I don't know what the Walk Score is for Kalamazoo.
It's 90 at this corner.
It's 90 at this corner. That's extraordinarily high. Most cities we work in have walk scores of about 55 to 60. So 90 is almost a perfect walk score. That's very high. And what's significant about it is the better American retailers are going to cities that have a walk score of 80 or higher. The better retailers are only opening stores where you have high walk scores. And this is Nantucket, for example. This has a 100 walk score. Petoskey has a walk score of about 97, one of the highest in the state of Michigan. Birmingham has a walk score of about 85. So you have a higher walk score than Birmingham. That's very good. That should be a good tool for you to attract strong retailers should you want to do so. A lot of the developers now that build apartments are putting retail on the first level of the apartments because they get 12 to 15% higher rents when there's retail on the first level. Yes?
How do you measure the walk score?
It's actually a black box. We don't know how they measure it. It's an app on your cell phone. It's called Walk Score. It's an app on your cell phone, and I don't know how they measure it. They measure things you can walk to. They don't measure the quality of the walk. So Nantucket, if these stores were all bricked over, but if they were still open, it would still have a 100 walk score. It doesn't measure the quality of the walk. It measures things you can walk to, like libraries and parks and public transportation and grocery stores. There's something called the Starbucks effect. If you can walk to a Starbucks from your house, home values are 12% higher. If you can walk to a Whole Foods, your home values are about 15 to 18% higher. There's going to be a large Starbucks built in this hotel on the main floor right now. There are developers right now that find out where Starbucks and Whole Foods are opening new stores, and then they buy all the houses in the neighborhood around it because they get such a fast appreciation. If your retail looks run down like this, and there aren't any retailers that look like this in Kalamazoo. I have visited already about probably 5 or 8 stores, and they're really the stores here are of very high quality. When I visit your store, I'm going to have to probably pick out something really dumb because the lighting and everything that I usually comment is so good in the stores that we've seen so far. But if your retailer looks like this, no one will want to live on top of that shop. And so if you have run-down retail, it hurts the property values. If you have high-quality retailers, like you have here in Kalamazoo, it makes the residential and office more valuable. And that's what's happening here. I think people are paying a premium now to work or live in downtown Kalamazoo because of the high-quality retailers that you have here.